Good morning to you. Good morning. Good morning to you. I don't know about you all, but are there ever songs that come to mind that you wake up to singing and you don't know why you're singing them? This happens to me quite a bit. And it was a really, really old song. Let's see if any of you all know it. The lady says this. She says, I was there in the beginning, and I'll be there when you get to the end. I'm all seeing, all knowing, almighty, ever flowing. I am God. And that refrain just keeps going over and over and over in my head. So I guess that the Lord wants to remind me that He is God all by Himself. He doesn't need anyone else's help. So I'm going to take that today and I'm going to meditate on it, feast on it, think on it, and all those good things for my day. We are back. Welcome to Daring Dialogues. My name is Shantae Charles. Behind me, you can see how to spell it. All right. And today we are on our relationship segment for Wednesday. And we have been talking about dating out of the book, Labor of Love. Good morning, Lady Dreamer. Good morning, Lady Barbara. Good morning to each and every one of you who are watching us across all different kinds of platforms today. I know that some of you take the video and you turn it into a mini podcast, which is really cool. I want to say thank you for tuning in every day. For some of you that come to listen in to our talk and what we're reading for the day in our discussion. Thank you for those of you who inbox me with encouragement. Thank you, Lady Kenyatta. Shout out to her this morning, who said that she was praying for me to get a spot on NPR. NPR, holler at me. All right. So I just want to say thank you to those of you who are constant, consistent listeners. And I hope that every day I'm sharing something new with you that you might not have heard on another platform. All right. That is part of my goals. So today we're talking about labor of love and we're talking about dating. And we're also continuing our talk on what is kingdom marriage? What does kingdom marriage look like by Tony Evans? I know there are many platforms that talk to us about dating and marriage. But I'm enjoying this particular book because it's bringing us back to the history and the foundation of dating, which I don't think a lot of people understand. And so that's why I want us to, excuse me, I have a little bit of cough today. That's why I want us to understand the importance of understanding the foundations of things before we jump into them. As I shared with you my story before, I gave up dating, or I kissed dating goodbye after the Lord told me to do that. And I did that when I was 18, which was like, who does that at 18, right? Unless you've been, you know, of course, some people have been raised in a Christian household and, you know, their parents have talked to them about, you know, waiting and all of that stuff. I didn't grow up in that kind of household. So when the Lord told me to stop, I stopped. I didn't know all of the reasoning why, but of course, as I have grown and as I have developed as a believer and the things that I have learned from the Lord, I just recognized that dating was something that was not necessarily for the believer. And if you have been with us reading reading Labor of Love. This is the actual research on the history of dating. And the more that we're reading, the more that we are realizing that the foundations of dating were ungodly. I mean, there's really no other way around it. So as we go through and we talk about this, I want you as a man or a woman to really think about your commitment to pursuing a godly relationship, right? But I also want you to think about how you're going to pursue that godly relationship and if dating should be a part of your equation or not. I know for me, it was not a part of my equation. And then as I just followed what God was telling me to do, which was to prepare myself to be a spouse, then he brought that spouse. And I didn't have to go through 99 dates and, 25 heartbreaks and all of that in order to come to the place of the person that he was showing me to become married to. And I've been married to the same man. Praise God. Hallelujah. I've been married to the same man happily, blissfully, wonderfully. Just this July will be 18 years. So I'm speaking from a process that I have walked out myself. I'm not really talking off the top of my head, but I've actually put into practice the things that God has told me to do that are biblically sound. Let me say that. So as we go into reading about the labor of love, we've been talking about, we just finished a chapter called Tricks, which actually details the fact that prostitutes, the only difference between prostitution and dating, all right, legally, is the fact that money does not change hands. Let me say that again. Historically, the only difference between prostitution and dating was the fact that money did not change hands. That was the only difference. And so we discovered that bringing courtship out of the home, because initially that's what people were doing. They were operating in the practice of courtship. And then society began to shift. Women began to shift in their attitudes. And so the process of courtship left the home and became something called dating, which actually disrupted the social order of not only the families that were trying to set their daughters up with a responsible man that would become her husband, but it also shifted the prostitution industry. So not only were families upset by this concept of dating, but also the prostitution industry was also upset by this concept of dating. So let's talk about chapter 2. We're moving into chapter 2, and that chapter is entitled Likes. Likes. Okay, here we go. Dating moved courtship from the home onto the market as it became possible to shop for your own mate. It also became necessary to sell yourself. Taste became a key way that a dater could create her brand. Let me just read that for you one more time. All right? Because now that we are so far into this concept of dating, good morning, Prophet Jonathan, and good morning, Pastor Ben, and good morning, Lady Ilana, who are in our chat box today. As we have moved so far into this concept of dating, it's actually really obvious to see what the writer is saying. But this is historically, all right? So, as it became possible to shop for your own mate, it became necessary to sell yourself. So when people feel like being out here as a single person feels kind of like a meat market, or it feels like you're always having to sell yourself or to be on point or to have, your fashion on point or whatever, it came from the fact that you now no longer have the structure of a family that is vetting the person, ladies, that is vetting the man who wants your hand in marriage. All right. So when we moved away from that family structure that actually asked the man the questions, that vetted the man, that made sure he was worthy enough to even approach you, to ask you your name, to be in your house, to have any kind of physical contact with you. When we took away those barriers, now you get the independence of shopping for your own mate, but you also now have the responsibility of selling yourself. And they're not talking about prostitution. They're talking about presenting yourself or advertising yourself as someone who is good enough to be in a relationship that may or may not lead to marriage. The woman now has to create her brand. All right. And I see a lot of branding these days. Okay. So what really matters is what you like, not what you are like in a dating scenario. In the movie High Fidelity, John Cusack says these words directly to the camera. His character, a 30-something record store clerk, wouldn't dream of sleeping with a woman who preferred recent Sting to a classic Police record. When the indie rom-com Garden State came out in 2004, the group the leading couple bonded over was the Shins. By the time 500 Days of Summer followed 5 years later, the 1980s were cool again, so it was the Smiths. The editors of the Girl on Girl Autostraddle agreed with Cusack. It's not what you're like, it's what you like, they wrote on a post on Valentine's Day 2012. It might take you a while to be sure, but one day you'll just know that it's time to lend her your copy of Birds of America. Hold your breath while you wait to see if she likes it. Either she will get it or she won't. Either your girlfriend gets you or they don't. Celebrity couples like Kim Kardashian and Kanye West publicly declare that they get each other. Kanye has the most amazing taste in the world, Kardashian gushed to a reporter. Her husband concurred. It's really all about dopeness at the end of the day. Ordinary daters dream of finding someone who shares their amazing taste too. At least they yearn for someone who does not actively offend it. A sad smile of recognition crosses my face when I overhear a girl on the train complaining to her friend about her one-night stand who started playing Limp Bizkit on his laptop in the morning. Though the sex had been good, there was no way she was going to give him her number. I want the guy to like the things I like, she sighed. Oh, that, my friend groans when I quote the line from High Fidelity to her. You wouldn't believe how many men put that on their OkCupid profiles. Over the past 10 years, the rise of online dating has given likes an increasingly central role to play in dating. Different sites and apps take stock of what you like in different ways, but they all give information about your taste a prominent place in the profile that prospective partners see. Match.com, for example, asks users to state their interests, their favorite hotspots, their favorite things. Even celebrities answer dutifully. When Martha Stewart joined in 2013, under her interests, she listed cooking, dining out, fishing and hunting, gardening and landscaping, movies and videos, museums and art, shopping, antiques, travel, and sightseeing. She and her favorite hotspot was somewhere called Sushi Yasuda. Her favorite things are British House of Cards, American House of Cards, Homeland, all the food, the symphony, opera, and rap. Martha's profile skillfully deploys just the right mix of self-revelation and elusiveness. Anyone who happened upon her profile was likely to know that she enjoyed all the food. But who knew she liked hip-hop? Likes may be especially important for famous people who want to use online dating services while preserving their anonymity. An attractive, successful professional in her 40s who uses several apps to date in New York City tells me about getting approached on OkCupid by someone who liked the same book she did. He did not have a profile picture when she asked why. He entreated her to believe that he had a very good reason. They traded messages about historical nonfiction for a few weeks before he asked to meet her. She showed up to the cafe prepared for the worst. It turned out she had been chatting with the comedian Rick Moranis. Virtually all dating sites ask users to supply information about what they like. Dozens of specialized services take things further, promising to match you with someone who has similar files in his or her iTunes or laughs at similar jokes. If you are the type to develop a crush on an Instagram account, there's an app for that. It's called Glimpse. It asks users to enter only the most basic information, age, gender, and sexual orientation. Then it lets you select a set of photographs, pull from your Instagram profile, and start browsing the photos of other users without any other identifying information. The idea that the way someone shoots a brunch plate and bathroom selfies might tell you all you need to know takes the idea that what you like reveals what you are like to its logical conclusion. It suggests that these aesthetic choices, like selecting filters, writing captions, might capture your personality more effectively than you can do in words. It also shows how most apparently trivial decisions can end up determining who actually likes you. Favorite books and bands have not always guided courtship. A monkey does not marvel that his mate shares his taste for bananas. Adam did not sidle up to Eve, refill her solo cup, and ask her if she too liked the punk band Husker Du. For most of human history, the idea that a preference for one consumer product over another could serve as a predictor of romantic compatibility between two people would not have made any sense. For one thing, there were not many non-essential goods to choose among. The criteria that guided courtship were far more limited. Here are some of the criteria that originally guided courtship: family, religious background, social class. That's it. What is your family like? What is your belief system like? And are you in the same social class as I am? If you're not in the same social class as I am, is that okay? Can I live with that? And if you're in a lower social class, is that going to affect my standing socially? Or are you going to be able to elevate to the class that I am in? Likes were frightened with little of significance that they have now. In the late 18th century, these facts began to change. Within 2 decades, the American and French revolutions took place. Anti-colonial revolutions in Latin America soon followed. Combined with the beginnings of industrialization, these upheavals helped to create a new middle class. As they rose to power, they claimed the high culture that had once belonged to the princes as their own. The revolutionaries who beheaded King Louis the 16th in Paris made the emblematic gesture of seizing the royal art collection and turning his palace, the Louvre, into a public museum. It was in this environment that philosophers and critics of art and literature began to talk a great deal about what they called gusto or gout or geschmack, or what we know today as taste. Theorists like Immanuel Kant claimed that judgments of taste were objective and based on reason. Although the reaction that a given person experienced before an object depended upon the sensations of pleasure or displeasure that the object caused him or her personally, Kant said this appraisal should have universal validity. That is, it should hold true for anyone and everyone. In retrospect, the obsession with taste looks a lot like snobbery, a tool for distinguishing people by social class. Taste was a way for an aristocracy with waning political power to assert its superior cultural capital. As the 19th century went on, criticizing the bad taste of the nouveau rich upstarts became one way for the first members of the middle class to hold their ground. Taste classifies and it classifies the classifier. The French sociologist Pierre Bourdieu has observed, information about class remains useful on the dating market. So, for example, in our social times today, right? Depending on whether or not you listen to an artist like, who's the latest artist right now? Kendrick Lamar. Depending on whether or not you listen to an artist like Cardi B, right? Most people right now, some people don't like her music. Some people do like her music. So you have what we might call a class stratifier based on whether or not you like certain artists that are quote unquote popular in the mainstream. That would be about class. As one person said, I was scrolled across an Instagram account and their video came up, and it was a political commentator that is well known, and she was listening to Cardi B in her post. And as she was listening, she was explaining to her audience why she listens to Cardi B. And she said, I am sophistiratchet. She said, I just want you all to know that I'm sophistiratchet. I can be sophisticated, but I also like hood music. And then her post, after she said that, her post ended. But what was she doing? She was qualifying her taste in a certain music by letting you know that, hey, I enjoy more than just sophisticated things, right? I enjoy something that most people might say is not sophisticated, which might be Cardi B style rap, right? So even in that small little snippet, she was kind of doing two things at the same time. She was pulling people that like Cardi B, but she was also assuring the people that come to her account for her political commentary, she was also assuring them that she's still as sophisticated as she sounds. All right. So there was the notion that taste classified and it classified the classifier. In an age when most of us no longer rely on our families to select partners for us from our own social set, or talk openly about how much money a year a love interest expects to inherit from their family, inquiring after taste is a way to select someone from the right background. Someone who announces a love of opera says that she or he is wealthy enough to buy opera tickets, or at least sophisticated enough to know about standing room. Accurately pronouncing the name of a wine that you order, or lingering on your description of its taste to show that you know about France or French, or at least know enough to drop the final letters, all denote something about your taste and therefore about your class. A lifetime of socialization causes many of us to send and receive these kinds of signals about class and background. Good morning, lovely husband. Without thinking about it. A savvy dater can use them to telegraph status. And if you understand these rules of taste well enough, you can manipulate them in order to date up or to date outside of your social strata. This is precisely what the first women who dated tried to do. Women who went to work at department stores, restaurants, and other businesses in the early 20th century often hoped to snag one of the men that they served. Flirting at work was the best chance many of them had at a happy or at least financially stable future. A gig as a salesgirl or a waitress puts a young woman on public display and brought her into contact with countless eligible men every day. If she was lucky, some of them might be rich. Just a decade or so earlier, it would have been nearly impossible for a working class girl to catch the eye of a millionaire, much less converse with him. Now she could get close enough for long enough to get asked out. Maybe she could even make him fall in love, which of course most of us know that the famous movie Pretty Woman is actually based on that premise, right? There's a recent movie that just came out that kind of expresses this notion of getting into the room with, as they said here, with men who are eligible. And the movie is actually about gambling. The name of it is Molly's Game, right? That movie recently came out, if you haven't seen it. And it has this notion of a bartending woman who is maybe upper middle class, but because of who she's working for, she gets a entree into the illegal or semi-illegal gambling world, and it puts her around all of these very, very wealthy men. It's a similar concept. Shortly after moving to New York from Texas and beginning his prolific career writing short fiction, O. Henry published a portrait of The Secret Life of Shop Girls. The story appeared in 1906 in a weekly column that he wrote for the New York World Sunday magazine. It told of two men who came to the big city to find work because there was not enough to eat at their homes to go around. Two chums, excuse me. A short preamble related that the two was the following. Nancy was 19 and Lou was 20. Both were pretty, active country girls who had ambition to go to the stage. But both got jobs in service. Instead of memorizing scripts, they spent most of their time studying the kinds of men they would like to date and the kinds of wives who had managed to win them. Nancy works as a salesgirl behind the handkerchief counter at a luxurious department store. Her colleagues go on dates, drinking and dining at the dime of gentlemen friends, without compromising their virtue, or at least without revealing that they have. She makes only $8 a week, but she knows that the real value of her position is in the visibility it gives her. "Look what a chance I got," she exclaims. "Why, one of our glove girls married a Pittsburgh steelmaker or blacksmith or something the other day, worth $1 million. Lou works ironing clothes in a laundry. Although she makes $18.50 her first week, she is less ambitious than Nancy when it comes to courtship. She pokes fun at her friends' plans to marry a millionaire, but she too tries to use her job to meet men. When Lou gets asked out at work, Nancy is skeptical. What show would a girl have in a laundry? It turns out that there is a coveted position at the front of the laundry where you can get some exposure. He came in for his Sunday shirt and collars and saw me at the first board ironing. We all try to get to work at the first board." O. Henry was not making this up. Francis Donovan, a University of Chicago trained sociologist who taught at Calumet High School on the city's south side in the 1920s, interviewed senior girls about their plans after graduation. "I would like to be a stenographer," one announced. "I'm going to be an executive secretary and marry the boss." After spending 2 summers working behind the counter at a Chicago department store as research for her 1929 book, The Sales Lady, Donovan believed that one of her students could do just as well there. "I knew of several marriages and heard of a great many more where the husband was far above the wife as measured by the economic scale," Donovan reported. About co-workers who managed to make a fine marriage, Donovan's research subjects expressed frank envy. "He's a millionaire from Kansas City. She has a Packard car, and did you notice that sparkler on her left hand? Isn't she the lucky one? And you and I go right on working." So, what did dating do? Dating opened up this notion that if a woman who entered into the working world was working at certain spots and certain positions, it would enable her to position herself to be seen by someone outside of her social class who she could then possibly date and then marry. So this was happening 1900s, 1920s, 1930s. What was going on then in American society, right? It was called the Roaring 20s for a reason. The legends of girls in their position who had married rich encouraged many service workers to daydream. The British annual magazine Forget Me Not promised to reveal to its readers how shop girls win rich husbands. Department store managers even got in on the game. Sparks, an in-house newsletter published for employees of Macy's in New York, regularly summarized selling floor gossip. Have you noticed a gentleman wearing spats stopping at Miss Holohan's counter every day, leaving a spray of lily of the valley? Best luck. Landing the job was a start. To make the most of her position, however, the shop girl had to become a highly informed consumer of the kinds of goods she sold. She learned to read the signals that men sent through the appearances they cultivated and the kinds of things they bought. In the O. Henry story, Nancy learns to look for hints about whether her customers are in fact rich. She spies on them as they slip in and out of their automobiles. A 12 HP machine and an Irish chauffeur, she scoffs when she sees this dead giveaway. Give me the real thing or nothing, if you please. Today, all of this kind of behavior would be logged under, let's see, maybe gold digger, right? That became a very popular term in the 80s and the 90s. I'm not sure what they call it today. All right. But in my day, they called it gold digging, or a woman who was looking for a specific kind of man who had money. In addition to scrutinizing customers, women in service positions strove to send the right messages themselves. To do this, they studied their female customers, the wealthy housewives that they dreamed that they too might become if they played their cards right. By dressing tastefully, they aimed to attract the attention of desirable men and to demonstrate that they deserve something better than their current station. Dress for the job you want, not the job you have, career advisors tell us today. Shop girls were the first to realize that it was not where you came from, but what you wear that determines how far you can go. In an earlier era, a girl from humble origins could not hope to look like the wife or daughter of a millionaire. But a job in a department store or a laundry gave anyone opportunities to become well-versed in the signs of wealth. After all, the sales ladies and laundresses were the ones selling the handkerchiefs and ironing the cummerbunds that made the rich people look rich. A growing number of inexpensive fashion labels offered to help them imitate their customers, so did beauty products. So, how do we get all of these labels and fashions? A lot of it came out of people wanting to imitate the wealthy who actually had the money. All right. The cosmetics industry exploded in the 1920s. Previously, only prostitutes and actresses painted their faces. Let me take a sip on that. Victorians had viewed natural beauty as a sign of clean living. Can't tell us that today. But around 1900, more and more women started to apply cosmetics. By 1912, the Baltimore Sun reported that even respectable society women are seen on our streets and fashionable promenade with painted faces. The cosmetics industry invented a new term to free its products from all the negative associations they once had. And that new term was makeup. Not only was making yourself up permissible, advertisers were soon claiming it was positively virtuous. By making herself up, a woman showed that she valued her femininity and was willing to spend time and money on her appearance. Do you see how that happened? So, having a clear, clean, makeup-free face was originally associated with living a clean life. Selah. But because they wanted to sell more makeup, they changed the term, or cosmetics, right? They changed the term to makeup and sold you on the idea that makeup was about valuing your appearance. All right? So, a makeup-free face that meant that you value your inner person turned into valuing your appearance And now let's check out the current billion-dollar industry of makeup. All right. It's still cosmetics, but most people use the term makeup now. So the results not only made her look pretty, they also demonstrated that she had a good attitude, the kind that her employer as well as her customers and romantic prospects wanted. Driven by anxiety as well as romantic ambition, the shop girl drove a kind of arms race. The more effectively she sold fashion and beauty culture to her clients, the more mandatory participation in that culture became. It was just what the economy needed. Robert Charles, that is not true. Mean girls all use makeup. Funny, funny, funny. By the end of the 19th century, the United States had become a consumer society. New technologies and labor practices had made shoes and shirtwaists easier than ever to produce. All that was needed was a population who shopped for new clothes and shirtwaists as quickly as factories churned them out. In the 1920s, individual consumption of non-essential goods came to account for larger and larger percentage of the GDP. Economists started to measure growth in health not in terms of manufacturing capacity, but rather by the public's ability and desire to buy things. In a market that required consumers to constantly develop new likes for things they did not need, the shop girl's work was essential. While on the clock, she helped others consume non-essential goods, things you don't need. Off the clock, she kept her own consumption up to speed. What has changed? In The Frog in the Puddle, a short story that she published in 1912, Edna Ferber described how exhausting it could get. Gertie, the heroine, works at a men's glove counter at the department store in Chicago. Her manager is particular about hair and fingernails. Gertie quickly learns that you cannot leave your hair and fingernails to Providence. They demand coaxing with a brush and an orange wood stick. When she returns home to her boarding house every night, she is exhausted, but she knows that her work is far from over. She must manicure her nails, mend her undergarments, apply cold cream to her face, brush her hair with 100 strokes. The manager won't stand for any romping curls or hooks in eyes that don't connect. Sometimes I'm so beat that I fall asleep with my brush in the air. So, as we talked about before, right? The concept of dating opens up big business, right? Because the daters are leaving the home, so now they have to figure out where are we going to meet to have these dates, which is why it opens up bars, saloons, pool halls, etc. So that business begins to boom. Now, right, the business of fashion and cosmetics begins to boom because as you are selling yourself, you now have to have some sort of presentation to go along with the notion and the concept of selling yourself. When we come back next week, we're going to continue to talk about the shop girl and attraction and likes. All right. So I want you to think about how much of what we do now, is based upon things that we have simply bought into that we didn't understand the foundation of, right? We're moving into our hot topic today for the married people. The title of the book is Labor of Love, The History of the Invention of Dating. All right? And we are now moving into our hot topic for the married people. We stopped we started going into fasting, and we're on our section called requests. And we're going to get into the purpose of prayer and sexual fasting. And then we're going to close for today. So we are definitely going to end a little early today. The purpose of prayer and sexual fasting. Sexual fasting seeks to deepen the spiritual intimacy of a couple as the two go before the Lord in agreement and prayer. Let's start with that first sentence. All right. Sexual fasting seeks to deepen the spiritual intimacy of the couple. The couple. It's not one person going and saying, well, I'm going on a fast, I'm going on a spiritual journey, and see you later. No. All right. According to scripture, the two actually agree that this fast is going to occur. So it's to actually deepen the spiritual intimacy of a couple as the two go before the Lord in agreement and prayer. It is designed to reach the root of any issues the couple is facing. But it can also be used in pursuit of an even greater spiritual level or breakthrough that the couple may be desiring. Let's say, for instance, that the wife in a marriage was offered a new job that will require significant hours away from the home, yet it's entirely in line with her gifts, her skills, and her passion. Not only that, but the job advances God's kingdom and appears to have come through God-ordained plans. Even so, the acceptance of the job will surely affect the daily dynamics of the home. Prayer is one way to seek God's guidance and confirmation on this decision of whether or not she should take the job. But prayer, coupled with sexual fasting, deepens this pursuit even more. It provides an atmosphere of urgency that opens the doorway for clarity and agreement to occur. Sexual fasting can also occur when a couple is in disagreement or in conflict, and both parties desire to overcome the existing issues but do not see a tangible way to do so. At these times, when a couple has grown distant, sexual intimacy may not be occurring on a regular basis. But by agreeing to set a time for sexual fasting with the intention of joint prayer, the couple has taken a proactive approach to healing rather than a reactionary approach to conflict. Keep in mind that after the established and agreed upon time has passed, the Bible urges a couple to unite again in sexual intimacy. Why? Because we explained this last week. Sexual intimacy is a weapon to the married people. Amen. And happily married people know this, by the way. They may not be saying amen. They might not say you sure is right publicly. But a satisfying sexual life is a weapon against the enemy coming into your home. Sexual fasting can also occur. Much of what creates conflict in a marriage is merely a symptom of a deeper problem. While you may think it's a personality difference or a values difference, the core of the battle comes from the garden where Satan brought about disruption by getting each party to vacate their respective roles and rebel. When couples fail to deal with the spiritual root while merely focusing on the fruit, they set themselves up for a cyclical storm. Sexual fasting with the intention of deepening your prayer life as a couple exists to get to the spiritual agitation that's producing the physical confrontation. It is designed to address the underlying causes in the spirit realm that are manifesting the conflict in the physical realm. Everything physical is rooted in something spiritual. The problem today in so many marriages is that couples focus entirely on physical symptoms of an issue, trying to micromanage each other rather than dealing with the heart and spiritual core of what is causing the conflict. Dr. Evans says, over the years, I've had the honor of serving as a chaplain for the Dallas Cowboys during different seasons. Some of the highlights of those times were during the Tom Landry years when the Cowboys dominated so much of professional football and went to the Super Bowl a number of times. Now, what does this have to do with sexual fasting? Hold on, I'm getting there. You may not realize that the entire week before Super Bowl, players on both teams, whether married or not, are to abstain from sex. In essence, they fast from sex. Why? Because coaches have learned in the past that when players engage in sex leading up to a game, it can drain them of both their energy and their focus. For this and other reasons, all players have to observe not only a curfew, but also a no visitors rule that entire week. Coaches have been known to sneak into players' rooms with flashlights at any time of night to make sure they're abiding by these parameters. I'm not going to read that out loud. Now, if the NFL coaches get better focus from their players in the big game, when those players abstain from sex, I imagine God gets much deeper focus from married couples in prayer when they also, in agreement, abstain from sex for a time. When God chose to visit the Israelites in the closeness of his presence, he instructed the men and women to abstain from sex. He wanted their deepest attachment and attention. And you can find that in Exodus 19, verses 9 through 15. So if I got a scribe on here today, you can type that in. Exodus 19, verses 9 through 15. When he called his people to a solemn assembly, a sacred time of spiritual renewal with him, he instructed the bridegroom and bride to leave their chambers, which is another way to push the pause button on sex. Joel 2 and 16. Whether your marriage is languishing in confusion, distance, or conflict, or you and your mate are simply seeking God's hand of blessing, favor, guidance, or manifestation in a specific area, sexual fasting demonstrates to God that you are asking to meet him at a deeper level. So again, let us clarify. Sexual fasting is not just because you're having a conflict. Sexual fasting can be used when you are both in agreement with each other and seeking God for a deeper level. All right? When you engage in sex as a couple, you discover how to be in tune with each other physically. When you engage in mutually agreed upon sexual fasting for the purpose of prayer, you discover how to be in tune with each other even more deeply spiritually. As a result, a greater experience of God produces greater growth in your relationship. 1 Peter 3 and 7 reminds us of a very sobering truth. There's more to having your prayers heard and answered than merely saying them. We read, your husbands in the same way, live with your wives in an understanding way, as with someone weaker. Thank you for those of you who are posting those verses. Live with your wives in an understanding way, as with someone weaker, since she is a woman, and show her honor as a fellow heir of the grace of life, so that your prayers will not be hindered. When there is disunity in your relationship, God is kept at bay. Let me say that again. When there is disunity in your relationship, God is kept at bay. When you are in union with your spouse, there is, I can't even explain it sometimes, but there's an open heaven over what you are doing with your spouse. And my husband can attest to this. He was on here earlier. I don't know if he's still in the chat box. But there has been times when he will go out to do something for me. And as a result of simply going out to do something for me as his wife, he is the one that gets the blessing and the discounts and the rewards and the free stuff. And he'll come back and he'll be like, wow, I need to do this again. and again and again and again. And I'm thankful that I have a husband that understands that. The same thing for me. There are sometimes I'll be going out and I'll be looking for something for him or for my home, and I will stumble upon a great deal or a good sale or something that will be a blessing and a benefit to my house. There are times when we'll go out together and God will bless us because of that unity in our relationship. It really does make a difference. So when the scripture tells a husband to honor their wife as a fellow heir of the grace of life, so that your prayers will not be hindered, as a husband, you understand that a part of your prayers being answered is how you treat your spouse. So I get really concerned when I hear husbands say things like, I don't listen to my wife because she's just a woman. Bro, what Bible have you been reading? This is why I want to ask some of you. Oh, her opinion doesn't really matter because she's just a woman. I've actually seen men write this and say this. And they're Christian men. So I want to say, brother, what Bible are you reading? Because the scriptures is very clear here that if you honor your wife as a fellow heir of the grace of life, not as your slave or your servant or the vessel who is beneath you, but if you honor her as a fellow heir of the grace of life, that you're joint heirs, that you're co-heirs of a promise given to both of you, your prayers will not be hindered. Okay? So, when there's disunity in your relationship, God is kept at bay, even with regard to your prayers. The principles we are looking at go hand in hand. Living with your spouse in the spirit of honor and unity will open the pathway to a more effective prayer life. And I'm probably about to get in trouble with my next statement. I know I'm about to get in trouble, but it's okay. How can I say this in the most kind way? If you are an intercessor, ladies, and you are a prayer warrior, ladies, and your husband is consistently disrespected by you, I'm going to ask that you turn off the conference call, stop hosting prayer conferences, and go and minister to your spouse. I know. I'm not going to get any amens, but I get it. Because listen, I want the spirit of honor and unity in my home. And if I don't have it there, why in the world am I leading a prayer conference? Why in the world am I having a conference call? I need to go back and make sure that honor and unity is in my house before I go around the world talking about I'm a great intercessor for anybody. Home first. Home matters. That's all I'm saying. All right? Prayer is indeed a powerful weapon in the war room of marriage, but it is a weapon that must be wielded wisely, with grace, humility, honor for each other, understanding, and when agreed upon together, sexual fasting. All right? So, don't use prayer as an escape hatch out of a bad marriage. Can I say that again? Don't use your position in the spiritual world as an escape hatch to not deal with your marriage or to not deal with your relationship and what your relationship in your house looks like. I tell my husband quite a bit. It is my joy to minister to him. It is my joy to serve him. Are there areas of myself in my life that I'm still working on? Yes, I am a work in progress. But my attitude towards serving him has not changed in 18 years. I enjoy serving my husband. I enjoy loving on my husband. I enjoy being around my husband. All right? It takes a lot for me to want to be away from my husband because I enjoy our marriage. I enjoy praying for him. I enjoy serving him. All right? So I don't use ministry as an escape hatch to get away from things that I don't want to face in my own marriage or in my own life. And unfortunately, we have a lot of women right now who are using ministry as a deflection rather than an assignment from God. It shouldn't be a deflection. All right? It really shouldn't. Your home should be that of unity, of honor, of growth, of development. It should be a place of peace. It should be a place of righteousness. It should be a place of joy. And when it's not happening in your marriage, okay, then you have to seek God and say, Father, what would you have me to do in my marriage? What would you have me to do in my marriage? Because if we don't do that, then instead of working on our marriage, we'll go and build a whole other ministry. And we will use that as an escape hatch rather than working on what is going on in our marriage, what's going on in our hearts as women. All right. I am talking to women. Okay. But it can be vice versa if it's a man doing the ministry. But what I'm saying is, don't neglect your marriage by turning that attention that you're supposed to be turning it to healing and dealing with what's happening in your marriage. Don't take that attention, that energy that you're supposed to be using to minister to your marriage and to build your marriage. Don't take that energy and then go build something else and say, God is in this. He might be in that, but it should not be at the expense of your marriage. All right? There is a growing number of people who are starting ministries, and then 6 months, a year later, they're getting a divorce. Why? Some of that could be because the energy they used to start this ministry should have been the energy they should have been putting into building their marriage and building and shoring up areas of their marriage that needed addressing. But rather than address it, they started a ministry. All right. So we don't want to be those people. We want to have healthy families. We want to have healthy marriages, and we want to have healthy ministries. All right. So I encourage you to evaluate yourself. Ask yourself. I ask myself every week, am I doing this because God wants me to do it? Or am I doing this because I'm deflecting? I want to make sure that the ministry that we're doing is led of the Lord. The activities he's calling us to get involved in is led of the Lord. The conferences that people ask us to speak in, that we're actually supposed to be going to do that. All of that. The message that I give on a Sunday, I want to make sure I heard from the Lord. I don't want to give people messages that should be for me. I don't want to just give people that. I want to give people, what is the Lord saying to the people? I know what he's saying to me, but every message for me and for my self-evaluation and correction is not necessarily for the body. So again, if you are married, if you're a married couple, especially if you're married in ministry, please evaluate what you are doing and make sure that as you are doing ministry, that you are not neglecting the unity, the honor, the grace, my God, the grace that God has on your marriage. There's a grace that God has on marriages. And somebody said the other day that marriage is not a reward. And they're newly married. They've probably been married 3 years. I'm like, who told you marriage is not a reward? Please go back and read your scriptures. Listen. God promises a single man favor that finds a wife. I would happen to believe that favor is a reward. He doesn't promise a single man favor who finds himself just being single. There's a reason why Proverbs 18:22 is in scripture. It says, he that finds a wife finds a good thing and in addition to her being a good thing, he obtains favor from the Lord. Obtains means you didn't already have it. Hello. All right. So singleness is not a punishment, but marriage is most certainly a reward. Okay? Just clarifying. Thank you for your time and attention today. Today has been another Daring Dialogue. I hope that I have said something to help you today. I hope that as we continue to study the invention of dating, that you come to your own conclusions about whether or not you should be engaging in this thing called dating. All right? Remember, light is the most daring opposition to darkness. So please go out today and be light. Let your light so shine before all men that they may see your good works and glorify our Father who is in heaven. Take care and God bless. And thank you for hanging in on our YouTube. Thank you today, Lady Judy and Prophet Lakia. I appreciate you all. Thank you all so much for taking the time to view and share. Take care and God bless.